I would recommend to anybody that's going to do this, firstly, I would absolutely recommend putting an SSD in an Xbox One X. If you've got one, it's absolutely fantastic.
Retro unboxing.
Hello viewers, welcome back to the channel. I'm Jonathan, and today I'm not doing very much in the way of retro. What it is really is a follow-up from a couple of weeks ago. You may have seen me do a bit of an unboxing video with a friend of mine who had got the Xbox Series X. Now, I must admit I was a little bit jealous after doing that video because I'd not got the latest and greatest Microsoft Xbox console. And for a couple of reasons. One, I didn't really have the available income to justify an upgrade, and two, you can't bloody get hold of one anyway, unless you want to pay some scalper 700 quid on Facebook or on eBay. So I thought I'll do the next best thing. I'll take my Xbox One X and upgrade it, and I thought I will stick an SSD in it and I'll get myself a fancy new Xbox Series X controller. Now, this wasn't quite as simple. Well, that was simple. Buying a controller was pretty simple. It's just a case of going to a shop, well in my case because we're still in lockdown, going to Amazon and buying a controller. Changing the SSD, however, was not as easy as I expected it to be. I'd watched a couple of tutorials on YouTube because there are plenty of them on there, and I decided how I was going to do it. I fancied doing a completely fresh install, so rather than transferring data from the internal hard drive, which is an old kind of mechanical 2.5-inch laptop style hard drive, this exact hard drive in fact, I fancied, so basically I wasn't really interested in what was on here. There was a couple of games and not much else really, so I thought I'm not too bothered about that. So what I'm going to do is put a blank disk in and then reinstall the operating system onto a fresh blank disk. The first issue I had was selecting an SSD. My first instinct was just get one of those. Right, so I would recommend to anybody that's going to do this, firstly, I would absolutely recommend putting an SSD in an Xbox One X. If you've got one, it's absolutely fantastic. It's made a massive difference. I'm not going to go into benchmarks and loads of timings. I did a timing run of Call of Duty, Black Ops, Cold War, from console off to into a game, and I did a run on that, which will come later in the video. So just a quick speed run. Again, I'm not too fussed about all the metrics, but I'm telling you, it is absolutely worth putting an SSD in your Xbox, particularly One X. Don't know about the other Xboxes, but I imagine it makes a big difference because these mechanical hard drives are pretty slow. So why I didn't just do this in the first place? Well, because these have a read and write speed of give or take 540 megabytes per second, which is great, but it costs about 120 quid to buy one of these, which, all right, it's not a big deal. But then I saw the NVMe drive for a little bit less money. This was 90 quid, and it was a 2000 megabyte read and write speed. So I thought, sweet, I'll get one of those, and then I'll get one of these little adapters and stick that in the Xbox. Well, unfortunately, what I failed to realise until doing some research after I'd started buying things was that there are two completely different NVMe M.2 disk drives. You've got the original, which is now kind of called NGFF, which is short for Next Generation Form Factor, which is what this isn't. The NGFF SSDs, the M.2 SSD drives, aren't actually that much faster than your basic kind of Samsung drive. So I was kind of what's the word? I was drawn in. I was drawn in by the 2,000 megabytes per second of one of these. The problem is, it turns out that when I got this out of the box, and I got the when I got the 2.5-inch SATA adapter, I kind of cramped. You could just about cram it in. It took a little bit of doing, but it got in. And when I plugged it in, the disc didn't recognise in the Mac, and I tried it. I got boot camp, so I tried it on Windows. Not interested. So I then started to do a bit of research and realised that this is a PCIe M.2 NVMe drive. So that's the key. PCIe is not, as far as I can tell, compatible. Someone probably is out there that can tell me that it is, and that I just need to get the right adapter. Well, I couldn't find the right bloody adapter. I got this one, which I thought, yeah, that's great. This actually does have a PCIe PCI Express card, so that fits in there nicely. But then it isn't SATA. It's U.2. All of these things are just creeping up on me, and I've never bloody heard of them. So that just wouldn't fit in the Xbox. So I'd already spent at this point, I think I'd got 3 different adapters. I'd spent 80 quid on an NVMe drive that is of no use to me. So I ended up just buying a bloody 2.5-inch Samsung SSD and putting this into the Xbox. Easy. Yeah, it is. In hardware terms, it's actually really quite easy to strip the Xbox down. I did video it, and you'll see me doing that throughout this video. There's a couple of screws on the back. You take the lid off, and then there's a dozen screws on the top. You turn it over. There's a couple more screws. You take the metal shrouding off. It's part of the heatsink. And then it's quite easy to actually physically change the disk drive. So I did all of that, put the Xbox back together, and then it turned on, no problem, as you'll see. And the update seemed to, it was working, it was doing its thing, but the computer, or the Xbox, kept shutting down. And I was getting a little bit frustrated with it, to be honest, and a little bit lost. And then it dawned on me that as part of the stripping down process, trying to put the thing back together, I had an issue with the power connector not sitting back into the casing properly. So because of that, I ended up removing the fan and the DVD drive, or the Blu-ray drive. And then what I didn't do when I put it back together was reconnect the bloody fan. So it was overheating, basically. When I'd finished and put the thing back together and plugged it in, it was just overheating because, well, there was no system fan. So I realised that. I stripped the Xbox down again, reconnected the fan, put the thing back together, and happy days. It did all the updates immediately, and I'm straight back into the Xbox home screen, and it's working. It's fantastic. It then took me another 4 hours to download Black Ops again, but it's done, and it's up and running, and it's fantastic. So yeah, again, I would highly recommend, if you're thinking about doing it and you are reasonably useful with a little Torx screwdriver, they're easy to get hold of. It's a pretty simple process. I would recommend it only if you are confident. Please don't watch this video as a tutorial. Watch this video with, and follow my words of caution, and maybe get someone who knows what they're doing to give you a bit of a hand. But it's worth it. It's really, really worth it. As you'll see throughout this video, the turn on speed and the intergame speed, it just makes everything so much snappier. Now, that could possibly partially be because it's just a fresh hard drive. If I'd put a mechanical drive in, maybe that would probably have felt a little bit quicker, but I somehow doubt it. The other thing is, these little things, they're still quite noisy because ultimately there's a spinning platter in there and a needle which accesses the information that's stored on the drive, whereas this is entirely silent. So yeah, very much worth it. Now the second upgrade. You may have just noticed also, I have had one of these. So in terms of loading games and things like that, it was working a little bit quicker, but there was just something that drew me into putting an SSD into there. And as I say, it was pretty much after playing with the Series X that kind of really made me decide that was what I wanted to do. But yeah, the second upgrade, to be honest, I don't actually feel it's that much of an upgrade, but I'd got the original Xbox One X controller, and I decided, as I said earlier, to pick up the Xbox Series X controller. It does feel a little bit nicer in the hand, as I've mentioned before. There's a lot more grip on this sort of part of the handle of the plastic, the controller, but otherwise, frankly, they're almost identical. The only real upgrade is that the port there is USB-C, but I mean, to be honest, that wasn't really worth the upgrade, to be honest. What I am going to do though is purchase an Elite Series 2 controller and bin this off, send it back, sell it on, whatever. So yeah, Xbox One X. It's hard to remember what to call them now, isn't it? Xbox One X. Should you do an SSD upgrade? Yes, absolutely. Watch my video as a bit of a word of caution. Don't necessarily watch it as a tutorial. I watched. To be fair, there was a tutorial I watched. I'll link to his tutorial on in my description below. The tutorial that I watched was fantastic. There was nothing that he'd kind of got wrong in the tutorial that I'd followed and got my thing wrong. I literally just buggered things up left, right and centre, bought the wrong disk drive. So heed the caution, don't mess around with NVMe, just get one of these. Maybe some people have done speed tests between the difference between the two. I'm not too fussed. That is plenty fast enough. Maybe later down the line it will be a little bit easier to use a 2000 megabyte NVMe drive if someone does an adapter. I did see an adapter, but it wasn't a full enclosure, and it was about 40 quid. So at which point I thought, I've already spent enough money. I think by the time I'd bought that and a controller, I'm up to sort of 200 quid. By the time I've spent that 200 quid, I could have easily sold this Xbox One X, and now we're up to 400 quid, so I could buy a bloody Series X. But anyway, so yes, do it. Any questions? If you do want me to take a look at, if you're interested in buying the parts or whatever, as I say, just get one of those. That does the job. Any questions, please ask. But yeah, otherwise, hope you've enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you in the next one. All right, thanks for watching. See you soon.
Retro Unboxing.